Welcome to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. KC Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. For Kevin Lock-ett, numbers are important, and they've added up for him. From his days playing football at Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa, then on to K-State, where he became an academic All-American, and then on to the very top as a wide receiver in the National Football League. Now, originally from Tulsa, Lock-ett's 7 years in the NFL included stops with the Washington Redskins, New York Jets, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the most important of all, the Kansas City Chiefs. Lock-ett decided to make KC home, and our community has been better for it. He's worked with some great organizations, including the Kansas Bioscience Authority, the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, and today he's a partner with Fulcrum Global Capital. And he's been giving back to the community all along through numerous boards, including United Way, Kansas City University, a Chiefs ambassador, and with his own Lock-ett Foundation. And that's what we want to chat about today. Kevin, I'm so glad you could find time to chat with us. You are one busy guy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, it's exciting to be on, and I'm a guy that has to stay busy. It's just who I am.
Well, all right, let's start there. You've got a foundation, but let's go into the beginning of Kevin Lock-ett. You grew up in Tulsa. Can you share with us a little bit about family, and were there role models for you in terms of working in the community?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, all of my community thought process and involvement really stems from my mother and father. So I grew up in Tulsa, as you mentioned, went to Booker T. Washington High School, was blessed to receive a scholarship to play football at Kansas State University. And from there, was drafted in 1997 draft to the Kansas City Chiefs, where I spent 4 of my 7 years in the NFL. And what I was always taught, if I go all the way back to my days, even pre-Booker T. Washington, I had role models where my parents were very active in the community. My father worked with the Tulsa Urban League for quite a while after he retired as a petroleum engineer. My mom was very involved in different motherhood initiatives within the community. So I've always seen that. And what they always impressed upon us growing up was, hey, it's really important for you to leave things better than you found them. And it's really important for you to invest back into those communities that have helped to make you successful. And so when we decided to start Lock-ett, it was 1998, 1 year after I had just been drafted into the NFL. And the idea was really, how can I start to help those communities that have been influential in my life? And so that's why the majority of our work to date, which I'm sure we'll go into, has been in Tulsa, which is my hometown, has been in Manhattan, Kansas, which is where I spent a significant amount of time, both in school and even after school. And then here in Kansas City, where my wife and I have decided to call home. So my wife and I have been married for over 20 years now. We have 4 kids, all boys. Our oldest son is 29 years old and has also gone in the same steps, went to Kansas State University. Was blessed to be drafted, and he's now in year 7 in the NFL. And then we have 3 other boys, a high school senior, Sterling, who will be attending Kansas State next year to play football. And then we have twin boys, Jacob and Jordan, who are 13 and in the 7th grade. And of course, our athletes as well.
So you are not sad in any way that they have found their way to Manhattan, Kansas?
No, not at all. I mean, we made it a point, though, not to push any of our kids to follow in those steps. I think, but what we did know is that if that was a part of their decision process, we could speak to the type of environment they would be going into. And one of the big words in Manhattan is at K-State is family. And we knew that the kind of experience they would get both athletically and academically if they did happen to make that decision. But Tyler made his own individual decision. Sterling did the same. So we tried not to push them, but we're very excited about the decision they've made.
Well, congratulations. That's fantastic for him. And I know he'll go and do great things. I've talked with other former players, some of whom are your friends, about college life and campus life as an athlete. And community. Can you share with us a little bit what that's like at K-State as an athlete?
Sure. Well, again, Bill Snyder was our head coach, legendary head coach, now in the College Football Hall of Fame. So I was blessed to play underneath a man who thought it was important to be successful both on and off the field. A great example would be in 1993, which would have been my redshirt year. It was the year of all the big floods. And we did not practice as a football team on one of the days that the floods was heavy, because he took the entire team down to build sandbags so that we could help out the community while everyone was banding together to try to prevent this big flood. So, he was sort of an extension to me of what my mom and father had sort of impressed upon me growing up. And he was very, very much about his players being involved in the communities. And so I've just been blessed that everywhere I've gone, there have been sort of mentors or role models who have continued to push upon me the importance of giving back to your communities. And now that we've settled in Kansas City, I've been extremely blessed for our foundation to be supported by some of the most amazing companies and folks that are doing work here in this community that love to give back to Kansas City and have chosen to give back partially through our foundation.
Now, as a parent, when Tyler was there, what did you see? Had things changed at all? Had they even hyped up more in terms of getting players engaged?
Well, yeah, I think it was probably about the same. I mean, Bill Snyder had left the university, but he came back a few years before Tyler decided to take on that role and to go to play at Kansas State. And so I think Tyler got the exact same experience that I got, that my brother got by going to Kansas State. But I think what was amplified was the fact that football now was an extremely large priority in that community. The community had grown almost twofold in terms of number of people in the city and all the development that had taken place, primarily because of what had happened in that football program. And so while he did a lot of the same things we did within the community, they were just amplified and at a completely different level. And so that was part of the decision process for him to go. Was we knew that he'd come out of there a very well-rounded young man. And that's kind of gone on as well. He's continued to figure out ways to invest in the communities to him that matter. And so he's got his own foundation called the Lock-ett Foundation. He does a lot in Seattle, which is where he plays and where he was drafted. And he does a lot in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because Tulsa had a huge impact on him in his life as he was growing up. And so he's chosen that those are the two communities where he wants to participate. And so he's got scholarship programs. He's got job shadow programs. He does a lot of work with the homeless that are down in Tulsa. And so, again, even though we both have different sort of foundations, they sort of are aimed, if you will, at a lot of the same population, underprivileged, at-risk youth, that we're hoping to just provide a hand up, not a handout, to give them an opportunity to be successful in life.
Well, I want to come back in a little bit to talk about Tyler, but let's talk about Lock It Up. So your first year in the league, you start this foundation. That's no easy task. I mean, you're focused on playing football. That's your job. So how were you able to do this? And were there helpers along the way?
Yeah, there were a lot of people that helped build this all together. I mean, it's sort of that idea that it takes a village. And so when I decided that this was something I wanted to do, of course, my mother and father were very, relevant in helping build this together. The Chiefs community and PR team were very, very helpful in helping to organize the idea. They'd obviously been through this with a number of players prior to that. So they helped in terms of helping us to understand, how to organize this, how to structure this appropriately, how to do it in the right manner. And so those two groups were extremely beneficial and helpful. All I really had to do was lay out what was important to me and where did I want to sort of have an impact. And that's really where it started from. And so where we started was in Tulsa. I wanted to start with the community that had impacted me the most. And so again, at risk, disadvantaged youth. And what we had really honed in on was really wanting to help on reading literacy. And I guess my view at that point was, and still is, kids, while they're in school and getting a great education, if they don't have the ability to read, or they're behind in terms of reading grade levels, then they're probably behind in every other subject matter. If you think about, social sciences, if you think about any types of sciences like chemistry and so forth, if you think about mathematics, they all involve reading. And so what we wanted to do was give them a foundation that would help them to be stronger, not only in sort of English and language arts, but also in all of the other subject matters. And so we thought what we were doing was pretty simple. I went back and grabbed a bunch of my kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade teachers and said to them, if you could change anything, what would you change? They said, well, the curriculum we have, we think is pretty good. We think it needs some adjustments. But what we'd really like is just more individual one-on-one time with some of these kids that we've identified that are at risk. And so what we did was, instead of trying to implement a program within the confines of the traditional public school system, we partnered with those teachers and with the public school system to say, can we take this curriculum? Can we allow these teachers the freedom to enhance it, which they did over one summer? And then can we provide those students that need some additional help assistance when we're not in school? So can we do it either after school? Can we do it in the summers? And what really eventually took hold was these teachers would spend a lot of one-on-one time or small group time with a lot of these students in the summer. And so we started to see significant reading level gains. The public school system was excited about it. And so that was really the first program that we sort of started and funded. And then we moved from there to Manhattan, Kansas, and continued to try to do some work there, less about building a program, but more about creating one. So what we did in Manhattan is we partnered with all these different areas across the university in terms of human ecology and the College of Business and all these areas, athletics. And what we did was said, we want to take at least 2 student athletes that are on the Kansas State campus, and every week have 2 student athletes read to one of the 8 elementary or middle schools that are in Manhattan, Kansas. And so the program just simply started with athletes volunteering time to go read to second graders, third graders, fourth graders, and so forth. What that grew to was a scholarship with 3 scholarships that we put in place to then go out and to support different students in areas that sort of mattered to me again. So one was for a student in accounting who was non-white, because when I went through the School of Accounting, I was one of 3 in the entire school. And so I wanted to provide an opportunity, at least some level of funding to others, because I'd seen the benefits of going through accounting. One scholarship, again, was for a student from Tulsa that had decided just to attend Kansas State University. And then one was for an athlete that was not on scholarship somewhere. So again, 3 areas that were very important to me. And that's what that grew to. And now where we sit, where the majority of our work takes place, is in Kansas City, where we reside. And so we've partnered with the Genesis Promise Academy. It's a charter school down in Kansas City, Missouri. And the original idea was to go in and do a program like we had done with the Tulsa public school systems. And what we found out in our research was that they had one of the state's top reading enrichment programs already in place. They just needed support. And so what we do now are we host 1 or 2 events a year annually in Kansas City to raise funds. And then we donate almost all of the money down to the Genesis Promise Academy just to support all of their reading initiatives. And so a lot of it is one-on-one work that they're getting with these incredible reading consultants. A few years ago, we were part of the group that helped to fund the first library ever built within the school. So again, we're back to reading, but again, it's the same population, if you will, that existed. So today, not as heavy in the Lock-it Foundation in terms of building programs and supporting and all of it. It's more now today hosting a couple of events with great partners that are mostly businesses as you think about Kansas City. So, Fox Equipment and Intrust Bank and Kansas City University and Heartland Coca-Cola and the Chiefs and just different groups like that. Robert E. Miller Insurance, CNC Group, those kind of groups that have continued to support the foundation for the last 15 years, doing events where we raise money and support what the Genesis Promise Academy is already doing, since no sense in recreating the wheel if they already have something that works really, really well.
Right. We're talking with Kevin Lock-ett, former chief and founder of the Lock-it Foundation, Kansas State Wildcat. I mean, we could go on and on about all those places that are important to you. Can you believe it's been 15 years since you established a foundation?
Yeah, it's been a while, and it's amazing to see all that's been done. But again, as we talked about before, couldn't be done without all the incredible people that are participating, all the different companies that I just announced, the volunteers that come and help support these different events, and just so many different people that all come together. A lot of the former players, so the guys that are at the Chiefs Ambassadors that come out, they just all make these events work, which ultimately allow us to raise money to go to very, very worthwhile organizations.
How many kiddos are in the Genesis School? Do you know roughly?
No, I do. What I do know is that the school, when we first got involved, was really a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade school. And because of their success, they continued to add a grade every year out. And so the last time I looked, I want to say they're probably kindergarten through 8th at this point because of the success that they've had. So it's amazing to me to see all of these kids who are at risk, come from sort of disadvantaged communities. Many of them are in financial situations that are very tough, and to see them academically compete with some of the other best public or charter schools that are in the Kansas City region is always amazing for me to see. And so that's why we continue to work with them, is just those kids are fantastic. And all they want is a fair shot. And that's part of what we try to give them, along with all the other people that support the school.
You go down very often to visit with the kids, or get a chance to see, firsthand what's going on?
Yeah, we definitely try to. Kevin Foster is the president. He's an unbelievable gentleman, but we try to do it more. Part of what you talked about, talk to the kids, but part of it also is, our family, our whole family gets involved. So I can think just recently we went down and the school had identified about 5 families, and we did Thanksgiving baskets from our family just for them. So we just try to stay as engaged as we can, even though we're as busy as everyone else. Just because sometimes it's not even about your money, it's more about your time. And so, when young people like that see you invested in them, then they feel a certain way about themselves and a certain level of self-confidence. And so sometimes it's time, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's connecting them to other resources that exist. But when those young people see you invested in them, then their level of interest in their own personal lives and their own personal path increases as well.
Why is it so important to you to involve your whole family in doing things like this? You got busy kids. They're at that age that you got a high school senior, and then you've got kids in middle school, and there's no shortage of things they have going on. So why is it important, and how do you craft that time?
Yeah, well, I just think it's important for everyone to be very well-rounded. We're blessed that our kids get to grow up in what I would call sort of a very unique and prosperous situation where they're in a beautiful neighborhood and things always seem easy, not a lot of major challenges and issues. But it's important for them to see that, hey, just 20 minutes away from where we are, there are people who are just as deserving as you are, who have different circumstances. And it doesn't mean that they're not a part of your community as well. And so, just getting them to understand that the idea of community is that it's not just one person, it's not a certain subsection, it's the entire community. And that we are only as good as our weakest link. And so it's important for those that are within the community that are doing well in certain areas to help out those in the community that aren't, because ultimately it's sort of the rising of all boats. It makes everyone stronger and makes everyone better. And so, again, if we can establish that kind of mindset into our young kids, then at least we know we've got 4 young men that are out there that are looking to help build up the communities that they're going to reside in when they get older.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Tyler is out playing for the Seattle Seahawks. He recently was honored with an award. I think that team focuses on giving back and being engaged in the community. Did you ever have conversations father to son about that, once he hit the NFL and, had that achievement?
Yeah, well, I think, he and I have always had very unique conversations. I mean, for us, and many people don't look at it like this, but for us, we've always felt that athletics was sort of an avenue or a pathway to being able to do something very special. Many people will look at it and say, well, athletics is the part that is special. And while that's true, part of it is just learning and understanding that there are greater causes that are just as important, if not more important, than the athletics piece as well. But what athletics does is it gives you a platform and it gives you an opportunity to produce and to provide at times for others. And so for Tyler, as we started talking about, even when he got drafted, what does success look like? We talked about goals that were success both on and off the field. And so I think he's achieved a lot of the successful goals that are on the field in terms of being able to go to the Pro Bowl and being recognized by his peers as one of the better receivers that are out there. He's got, a couple of long-term contracts. And so financially he's happy. But off the field, I think he's right in the midst of achieving a lot of the same goals that we talked about. How do you uplift your communities? And so he's done some of that through some of his programmatic work at the Lock-ett Foundation. I would say, a few weeks ago when he was named Seattle's NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year, which is really sort of think of it as an award that goes to the one player on that team that's chosen by the players themselves as the player that's most involved in uplifting their community. When he was selected as that person for the Seattle Seahawks this year, I think that was sort of the pinnacle, if you will, right now of the work that he's done off the field. And so he's got an opportunity here shortly when the Super Bowl comes up to possibly be not just one of the 32 people that have been selected as the Walter Payton Person of the Year for their team, but ultimately the NFL will select a single NFL Walter Payton Player of the Year. And so he's within that group. He just recently got also the NFL's Art Rooney Award, which again is about being a great teammate and giving back to your community. And so I think what hopefully we seem to have done is to create, again, another human being who is very, very talented in a lot of different ways, but understands that his value and his self-worth doesn't solely come from what he does on the field. It also comes from the work that he does off the field. And I think he's right in the midst of really building out what that legacy will be.
You've got to be awfully proud.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love to watch him play and all the incredible things that he does. But I think, my wife and I will tell you the thing that we love the most is, when the game's over and, your phone rings less than 10 minutes after it's over and he's still in the locker room. And he's talking about not just the game, but he's also talking about, hey, I got this event tomorrow and I need some help. How can we do this? And so it just lets you know that at a moment's notice, he understands that there's a reason he's playing this game. And it's not just to do what he's doing while he's on the field. And so that's probably the most exciting thing, is to see him being recognized as a leader both on and off the field.
Well, and the incredible things that you've done here as well. You had mentioned a little while ago about events. What are the events that you all do so folks could, watch out for them and be supportive?
Yeah, so our major event, we do some small ones here and there where we partner with the Chiefs ambassadors and others, but our really big one is we throw an annual golf tournament every year. We bring a bunch of people out, they have fun, they play golf. Every year we raise tons of thousands of dollars that go to the Genesis Promise Academy. But we've done everything from, benefit dinners. But usually when we have our annual golf tournament, which has been sort of the staple event we've done, it involves an auction and it involves a bunch of celebrity players or current and former players. So that's really our one extremely big event that we try to put on to raise a ton of money every year that goes back to the school.
And when does the tourney usually occur?
Usually occurs in August of every year. And so new information will be going out probably early in 2022 about the tournament. But we're sold out every year. We have incredible sponsorships. And so, again, I'm just thankful that the community sees so much value in what we're doing, and that we have an event that's fun, but also allows those that participate the opportunity to know that their investments, their dollars, the dollars from from all the auction items, et cetera, are all going to a cause that's so meaningful right here in our own communities.
Do you have any particular story or situation that stands out over these 15 years to you that kind of just make you go, yeah, this is why we do it?
Yeah. I would probably say, I'm trying to remember when it happened, but one of the young people that went through our very first program when we were had my elementary school teachers doing some work in the summers, had a chance one time when I was back in Tulsa at an event to come across one of them who came up and introduced themselves, and just to see the growth. I don't remember that young man at that time, but to see that he was at 20 plus years old, who had talked about going on to successfully be in high school, go to college, to graduate, and to say thank you, because I can remember when I was 7 or 8 being teased because I was so far behind in terms of my reading levels and so forth. And so we were able to talk about different experiences with, our teachers, Miss Harris, who was my teacher, who was still teaching at that point in time. And so it's just moments like that just happen periodically where you continue to get encouraged to know that the work that you're doing makes sense. And again, even if all of this is only to help one kid every year, then it's all worth it. And I know we're helping many more kids than that.
What's been the greatest challenge or challenges you've faced as the foundation, and time has passed?
I think it's time. I mean, it's, you're busy with your own professional life. You're busy with your own family. But this is so important. You have to figure out how do you make time for this? It's also, again, partially because of the athletic platform, you get pulled in so many different directions. I think the biggest thing is there's so many worthy causes that exist just within our community that it's hard not to want to participate in all of them. It's also hard to raise a ton of money every year and to want to give it out to 8 or 10 or 12 different groups that are also deserving. And so part of the challenge has been, how do we really stick to our core mission and what's important, even though we come across many different organizations that are worthy. And so we've been able to do that through our relationship with Genesis. But then I'm also able to find ways to assist some of those other worthy organizations through United Way, where I've sat on the board, or through the Chiefs Ambassadors Group, where we raise hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and we donate it back to the Kansas City community. So it's not that they fall to the wayside, but it's really how do we, as the Lock-ett Foundation, stay very mission-centric on what we're doing, even though the hardest thing is to turn down proposals you get from very worthy organizations and people that need help that just are off mission for you. But we're always trying to find, in our view, a landing spot for anyone that's supporting that type of work in our Kansas City community as well.
Well, that's great. You don't just say, sorry, we can't help you. And you maybe say, here's a door you can knock on and maybe get some help. The best way to keep up with the foundation is your website.
Yeah, it's our website. We keep that updated quite a bit. We usually put all of the different programs and everything that we're supporting. Anyone can go there and really figure out, how did this foundation begin? Why are we doing what we're doing? And then see a lot of the local sponsors that are really helping to keep this engine moving forward. So that's probably the best way by far.
And it's Lock It Up all together.
Yep, it's lockitup.org. That's our website.
Great. And where do you see the foundation being maybe in 10 years from now, when your other 2 kiddos are going to be seniors and going off to college?
Well, hopefully somebody in my family will continue the legacy and keep pushing it forward. But I at least know for my life and my wife's life, this is something that we'll continue to do, because when we look at the amount of time and effort that's required, and we compare that to the results that we've gotten or that we've been able to support, and we see those young kiddos that are growing and developing, it's hard for us not to look at each other every year and say, okay, we've got to find time to make sure we can have those 1 or 2 events, because the amount of money that we're able to push towards those young people in those programs is not meaningless. It's significant.
Well, we thank you so much for creating a foundation, for paying it forward, for seeing that there's need and stepping up to the plate in the midst of you raising your own family and building on that. So Kevin, thanks so much for your time and sharing your story.
Absolutely. Happy to. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, and we're proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. If you'd like to be a guest on KC Cares, please visit our website, kccaresonline.org, and spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. Don't forget, you can catch us Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us for KC Cares.